What's up? This is Charles with Rocky Mountain ATV MC. Today I'm going to show you guys how to install a Tusk electronic power steering kit on your Yamaha Rhino. Today we're talking about my #1 upgrade for the Yamaha Rhinos. These things are awesome machines, and even though they don't make them anymore, there's still a ton of them out there. Now, they do have a weak spot with the steering. They can be kind of hard to turn, especially if you have oversized tires on there. And as you go over rocks and other obstacles, you can get some serious kickback through the steering wheel. And if you have one of these, you know what I'm talking about. You got to keep your thumbs out of the way so the wheel doesn't rip them off. That's why the Tusk electronic power steering kit is my #1 upgrade for the 450s, 660s, and 700s. It's going to help eliminate some of these problems. You're going to have a better overall driving experience and reduce driver fatigue. So it's an affordable upgrade that is well worth the money. Now, as far as fitment goes, this is a bolt-on kit, and installation will be a similar process for all of the Yamaha Rhinos. We're going to show you how to do it on a 2007 Yamaha Rhino 660. As far as parts go, we have the Tusk electronic power steering kit. So this is going to come with your motor, control unit, your wiring harness. You've got a hardware pack, the steering shaft, and your mounting plate. When you open the kit, you'll want to read through your provided set of instructions, and throughout the process, you'll want to refer to your model-specific service manual. To do this job, we're going to need a rubber mallet. We have our penetrating oil, anti-seize, test light, our drill. We've sourced some zip ties to use with our kit, both small and large. You're going to need, in sockets and wrenches, 10, 12, and 13 millimeters. We've got our pliers and side cutters, flashlight, rags, safety glasses, rubber gloves. You'll need some drill bits. So we have our pilot bit and then a 5/16 inch drill bit. That's the important one. And then we have an auto centering punch and a file. First thing we're going to do is raise the hood. The instructions tell you to remove this dash, but really you don't need to. All you need to do is remove these 4 bolts from the steering column, and we can access those just fine underneath the dash. And we do need to remove this regulator rectifier. The next step is to remove the steering shaft. So it's going to be helpful to spray a little bit of penetrating lube on that joint. Once you've done that, you remove the retaining bolt. So on our machine, this is a 10 millimeter head bolt. And I do want to point out, we've already made sure that our steering wheel is perfectly straight. Our wheels are pointed straight ahead right now. That's just going to help with installation later on. So once the retaining bolt is out, we're going to disconnect the steering shaft, and we'll go ahead and move down to the bottom and remove that connection as well. Now, our steering shaft came off fairly easy. If yours is stuck, again, you can use some penetrating lube. Now we're going to install our new steering shaft. So this portion with the slip joint, this is going to be facing our power steering unit, and this other end will go towards the rack and pinion. We need to remove this bolt from it. Make sure this is correctly located on the rack and pinion on that shaft coming out. And we're also going to use just a little bit of anti-seize. If you don't have anti-seize, you can use some grease on these splines, and that way they don't get stuck to it. Now on the bottom of this steering wheel shaft, you'll see there's a little flat spot. That's where the bolt in our U-joint is going to go through. And then you also want to make sure that these splines are clean. Now for the U-joint, you'll notice that there is one hole with splines that has a larger inside diameter, and then one with a smaller inside diameter. The smaller inside diameter will go to that steering wheel shaft. And again, we're going to remove this bolt all the way. And we're going to put anti-seize on these splines on both sides of this U-joint. And then also on that slip joint on our other steering shaft, we're going to put these on there as well. So if that bolt goes smoothly all the way through, then you know you're lined up. And all of these upper bolts, we're going to wait to tighten these down until everything's all lined up and completely installed. Next, we'll remove both of the bolts for the U-joints that go to the power steering motor. One more thing we're going to do on the bench is we'll take the other mounting bracket. This is how it's going to sit on one of your frame tubes. What we're going to do, just because it's hard to get to, we're going to install this control unit onto the back side, and we're going to have all the electrical connectors facing that passenger side. So, and again, that's with this elbow facing down. And again, the hardware that's going to hold this on has the flat washer and lock washer already on the bolt. And we're just going to leave that loose for now, again, so we can adjust this. Back at the machine, we need to get ready to mount up our control unit and mounting bracket for the power steering. So before we go any further, we have some electrical accessories that we need out of our way. So I'm going to go ahead and cut these zip ties. Once I've done that, I'm going to reinstall the 4 bolts that are going into the steering wheel shaft. Next, we're going to take the control unit and upper mounting bracket and set them into place. So the control unit, it's going to sit under the dash, and then the upper mounting bracket is going to sit underneath your regulator rectifier. And for now, we're just going to use the bolts for the regulator rectifier to set this into place. All right, so we have this bracket temporarily in place. We need to install 2 more bolts into it. So what I'm going to do, we're using these longer bolts. It's going to go all the way through that frame rail, and we have this bracket sitting level on both of these bolts. So we can go ahead and use our auto centering punch and mark where we need to drill our holes. So at this point, I'm actually going to take this bracket back off, and we're going to drill 5/16 inch holes all the way through. Just keep in mind, you're going to go through this first side of the rail, and then there's one more side on the back that you need to drill through as well. So now we can set our bracket into place. And I'm actually going to start with the 2 longer bolts. I'm also putting washers on both sides of these longer ones. Now at this point, I'm going to take the regulator rectifier and I'm going to insert these stock bolts back through it. And we're going to leave all of this hardware loose. Next, we're going to install our power steering motor. And to do this, I'm going to line up the splines on the lower steering shaft with this motor first. Then we can align the splines on the upper steering shaft and then install the bolts on both sides. To get enough clearance for this motor, I'm actually going to flip this regulator rectifier over and run the connection from the top down. All right, now that we have everything loosely mocked up, what we need to do, we need to make sure we have clearance between this brake master cylinder reservoir and our brake light switch. So you can see the shaft is actually hitting the brake light switch. So what we're going to do, we can rock this top bracket sideways and gain a lot of clearance that way, and we can move this motor mounting bracket, we can move that up and down to gain clearance as we need. You should be able to gain enough clearance by moving these 2 brackets. If you can't, I've heard of people bending this tab where this brake light switch mounts up. That is an option, but really you shouldn't need to do it. So I'm going to have a helper help me hold everything in place while I tighten it down. So we'll snug down that top bracket and then make sure we have enough room. And now we'll tighten down our last pinch bolt. To get this joint to fit up right, I actually did have to loosen these steering column bolts back up. So I'm going to go ahead and tighten those back down. So at this point, what we need to do I moved these wires out of the way for this brake light switch, and we need to route them back to where they go. And we also need to zip tie this hose to the frame. I'm going to zip tie all that stuff once we start zip tying our wiring harness down. All right, the next step, we're going to connect our electrical connectors that are coming from the motor. So these only connect in one position, only one way they can go on. So I'm going to start with this bigger connector. This is going to be towards the top, and you want to push these on until you hear them click into place. And then the smaller electrical connector, this one's going to go towards the bottom. All right, the next step is to get our wiring harness installed. So this is going to come with 2 wires that go directly to the battery, and then this white wire is going to go to a key-on accessory power, and then the 2 switches connect into the control unit. So we're going to start by just getting this routed. We've got a 12-volt accessory switch right here. We're just going to tap into that. So we're just going to run the harness along here to the battery. All right, to verify that we have key-on power, I'm just going to use a test light. We'll make sure it works on the battery. And we'll check that accessory wire. We're going to go straight to the red one. I'm going to turn the key on. We'll verify that the light comes on. Then we know that we have key-on power. So I went ahead and I removed these wires from that accessory plug. So the key-on power wire is this pink wire with the dots on it. So I'm going to take this electrical tap that came in our kit. I'm going to slide it onto this pink wire. And we'll clamp down on this tap. We'll wrap the top of this over, make sure it snaps into place. And then we're going to trim off the end of this white wire. Then next we're going to reinstall our connections. We'll finish routing our wires. We'll make our battery connections and then zip tie everything down. Now, just before I tie everything down with zip ties, I do want to turn this key on and make sure that the power steering is working. So you can see how easy that is. I'm using one finger on this. If the power steering for some reason isn't working, you're going to want to go back through and check your work, make sure your connections are correct, and make sure that you have the correct key on power source. At this point, what we're going to do, go ahead and finish zip tying everything down. And that's all there is to installing the Tusk electronic power steering kit on your Yamaha Rhino. If you need this kit or any other parts and accessories for your machine, be sure to check out our website. We have free shipping for orders over $75. And for more helpful content like this, subscribe to the channel. Thanks for watching.